Welcome to the Conceive, Believe, and Achieve podcast. Today's guest is another special one. This is Hannah Taylor, all the way from St. Catharines. She is a international wrestler for Canada, but she's also wrestled for, and you can see it, the Brock University Badgers. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, it's great. We just had Chris Woodcroft on the show, and he's talking about the Olympic trials and how it was pretty exciting. And I'm assuming that you were participating in that.
I was successful in claiming the top spot for the 57 kilo weight division for females.
Hmm. Pretty impressive. That's what he was talking. He was talking it up. He said it was going to be a big show. There was only going to be 12 spots, and you earned one of those 12 spots. Tell me about. I guess is this the first time that you've actually been to the trials, the Olympic trials?
So this was actually my second go at the Olympic trials.
Hmm.
4 years ago, I fell short of making the team where I lost in the finals of the 57 kilo weight class in a best of three series. I lost to Montreal, Linda Moraes, who then went on this year to win a spot as well. So to come back and claim a spot was great.
Hmm. So let's go back to I guess that time when you lost, and your thoughts. I guess right after, and then did you change anything in your training, progressing as you progress to this year's Olympic trials, the 4 years in between?
Yeah, for sure. So 4 years ago, I was a little bit less experienced in terms of wrestling. So I went to the Olympic trials. I thought that I could win it. But realistically, I was just not good enough. I mean, I lost 10-0, 10-0 in the finals. So clearly I just wasn't good enough at that time. So it was kind of like a realization that like, hey, I got to get better. So leading into this Olympic trials, I did a lot more technique. I did a lot more working on my skill development. Sometimes we get into these areas in wrestling where you just want to score. So I'm going to do whatever it takes necessary. But in the room, it's more important for me to work on the things that I want to be able to be successful on moving forward. So instead of just pulling out garbage moves in the room, I'm trying to work on things. So I feel like that has helped me technically. So it got me to a point now where I feel like I'm overall more of a technically sound wrestler opposed to 4 years ago where I fell short because I just simply wasn't good enough.
So who did the evaluating? Was that a self process? Like when you hit that roadblock, you had that realization. Was that your thoughts? Hey, you know what? I've got to change things to get to the spot I want to be, or was there somebody there in the background that kind of gave you a little bit of push?
I think that was more of a self-evaluation. I mean, obviously our coaches every single day are pushing us to be the best, and they'll guide us technically on how we're going to get there. But I think like mentally walking into a tournament where you think you're ready and you think you can win it all, and you're kind of humbled in the sense that you realize when you walk off the mat, like, wow, I pulled out all my stops and I had zero answers. It's kind of a humbling experience where then you have to reevaluate, like, okay, where am I going to go from here? What am I going to do? And how am I going to get there?
Mentally, that could be very straining at those type of losses. How did you, I guess, bounce back mentally from those?
I think I think mentally for me that is it's an easier thing to accept.
Mhm.
I've actually lost a ton of matches, and I walked off the mat and said, "What if I did this? Why didn't I do this? Why am I holding myself back? Why didn't I just give it my all? I'm not that tired after this match. How could I have lost?" Like kind of thing when you're going out there and you're wrestling because you're scared to lose. So I wrestled like that for a long time, and I would lose close matches, but I'd walk off the mat and be physically fine. I'm like, well, that wasn't that tiring. So walking off the mat, knowing that you're not as good, that's a solution. Like a solution you can fix. Like I can go and try to get better and learn more techniques. So that is easier to accept for me mentally than it is walking off the mat, losing to a competitor that I should have actually been more successful against.
Mhm. I want to get into your bio, your because I missed that at the beginning, but I want to talk about what you've done on the mats. I just Googled Team Canada, and what it's got in front of me right now is a two times, correct me if it's written wrong, but two-time 57 kilogram bronze medalist at the UWW World Championships in the under 23 division. That's 2019, 2021. 57 kilogram bronze at the 2022 Commonwealth Games. You made your Pan American debut in Lima in 2019. You won the 57 kilogram silver at the 19, sorry, not 19, that's a little farther off. 2019 Pan Am Championships. And that was the first time competing in the tournament as a senior. And you repeated as a silver medalist in 2020. You won the gold at 57 kilograms, junior division at the 2018 Pan American Championships. Wrestling Canada's Junior Female Athlete of the Year in 2018. You were named U Sport Rookie of the Year in 2017 while competing for Brock University Badgers. And you won a back-to-back U Sport national titles in the in the 59 kilogram. You went up a little bit there in 2018, 2019, before moving up to the 63 kilogram weight class and winning the 2020 U Sport national title. Does that sound like you?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay. No corrections needed there at all?
No, those were all actually correct.
Awesome. So you have a little bit of a decorated past there, and you're still going because you're striving for Paris. Is that what it is?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So what do you have to do now that you've won the Olympic trials? I know the process. I've been through it. I've had wrestlers have gone through it. But for people that are just listening, what is the process? You have won the Canadian Olympic trials. Now that you've won them, do you have a free ticket to go to the Olympic Games, or is it there's something else?
Yeah, there's more on top of it. Unfortunately, just winning in Canada isn't enough to grant you a berth at the Olympics. If you think about how many countries that there is in the world, I think 190 something. They can't have a wrestling weight class with 190 some wrestlers. That's unrealistic. So the qualification process for wrestling is result based. So the first opportunity to qualify for the Olympics was actually at the previous World Championships, which you had to get top 3 or top 5. And then now we had our Canadian Olympic trials, so that gave me the opportunity to now be Canada's representative to try to get a spot. Unfortunately, Canada was unsuccessful in getting any qualifications at the previous World Championships, so we're left to 2 more opportunities as a Canadian team. The first one being the Pan American Olympic qualifiers, which is arguably the easier route to make it to the Olympics in the sense that it's only one region of the world. You can still have a lot of tough wrestlers, but it's just the Pan American region competing in that event. And for that event, you have to get top 2. So you have to win your semifinal match, and if you don't get to go to the Olympics. Mm-hmm. After that process, that's actually happening in Acapulco, Mexico, at the end of February. Mm-hmm. So once that event happens, then you reevaluate. Did you win your semifinal match and are going to the Olympics, or are you going to have to attend the last chance qualifier, which I believe is in May?
Mm-hmm. And where's that? Do you know?
No, I didn't look that far. I'm going to qualify.
Well, I guess that's the athlete mindset. You don't want to look farther ahead. You're going to focus on what you've got right in front of you. So, and that's in, you said Mexico?
It is, yes.
Okay. Let's talk about funding. I talked a little bit prior to the broadcast about my dad's history being a 3-time Olympian, 10-time national champion. There were no funds back then. It was really hard for athletes to get funding. And of course, he had to get sponsorship through businesses. Talking to Chris Woodcroft a couple of weeks ago, it seems to be in the same kind of position. Not as bad, but how is funding and how are you gaining funding to help you out with this?
So I'm actually lucky enough to be one of the carded athletes on the national team. So the carded athlete program pays me monthly, and it's like a monthly sum that helps pay for like my living allowance, training allowance, and that kind of gives me the freedom to not have to work like a full-time job on top of my training, because that is, as many wrestlers know, extremely difficult, especially if you're balancing other things like traveling a lot on the national team or in school as well. So with my carding money, I can use that to go towards trips, and it's enough for me to like live with, I guess. The second area of funding is I'm actually a CAN Fund recipient, so I was given a one-time sponsorship through them. So that has allowed me to attend more international training camps and tournaments this past year, which I'm extremely grateful for. And then I guess the third area is Wrestling Canada does have funding events. So there's some events that I get to go to internationally that are fully funded or partially funded. So it depends on your position on the national team and kind of the funds within Wrestling Canada for what events that they're going to sanction. Unfortunately, there's a lot of out-of-pocket costs. So it's definitely hard to try to gain savings at this point in my career because I'm putting it all out there, just trying to get to anything and everything I can by spending my own money to go to these locations. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm glad to hear that it's gotten a little bit better. Sounds like a lot better than what it was when my father was wrestling. So good on Sport Canada and everybody else that's involved in getting you to those places. Let's talk about your training. The Brock Badgers, great place to be training. One of the toughest universities in Canada here for wrestling. What's it like for you? I guess let's talk about maybe your before you got to Brock. Let's talk about your wrestling career then. This is in PEI, was it? Is
Yes.
that where it
So
started?
I'm originally from Summerside, Prince Edward Island. My family lives there, um, and I grew up there. When I got into high school, I knew that I wanted to go to university for wrestling. Unfortunately, in Prince Edward Island, we do have the one university, University of Prince Edward Island, but they don't have a wrestling team. So I knew that I was going to have to go elsewhere. I guess, even back before that, I started when I was in grade six. I was always drawn to wrestling because my uncle Troy Hicks had wrestled for Lakehead University.
Mm.
And I was drawn to it not because of the sport or because I knew anything about it, but because at my grandmother's house and my grandfather's house, they had a box of medals of my uncles, and I used to wear them. And I was like, I'm going to join wrestling because I want all these medals, just like Troy, which is kind of a funny story now because obviously, as wrestlers know, that is like the most insignificant part of the entire process is receiving a little dinky medal for your efforts. Um, so I then actually found a team at a neighboring school. My school did not offer wrestling, but I joined a different school's wrestling program, just gave it a try. And after my first practice, my coach, Dominique Ballet, my first ever coach, said to my mom, she's going to go to the Olympics. Which for me, that kind of like stuck me to the sport after like the first practice because I grew up watching the Olympics. I grew up playing the Olympic video game on my PlayStation. My dad, Norman Taylor, would make games for my sister and I, Caitlin, to compete against each other. We would literally be running on sandbars. We would be sledding, just making up these Olympic games. So when I heard that maybe wrestling could be that avenue that I could take to get to the Olympics, I was hooked. So I then, from my school position on the team, joined a club, Wolfpack Grappling. So it was a grappling club, and it was all males. But the coach, Colin Danfield, welcomed me with open arms, which was great. So that gave me that next step up, which then led me on to the provincial team for the Canada Games cycle in 2013 in Prince Edward Island.
Hmm. So you go. Let's go back. The first coach. What was? I guess he made that comment about you going to the Olympics. What was it that he saw in you that you think made him say that?
I mean, it's kind of funny because I look back at my first ever matches and I don't see it. I don't see what he saw apparently because me technically looking at it, I'm like, I was all over the place. I was making stuff up. I was just doing what I had to do. But maybe that's what he kind of saw. He saw like the fight in me
Hmm.
and saw like the willingness to go get it. Because for me, technically, it wasn't. I was not very good, but I mean, I kind of had to do what it had to take to win. Use my physicality and use my athleticism. And he probably saw that and was like, "Wow, she got a lot of fight. She's pretty eager." So I guess that would be my guess.
Yeah, I coach wrestling still, and there's a young girl in one of our classes, and she has, and I've always said this about her that she's going to go places. I haven't said the Olympic thing yet because I don't want to jinx myself, but I watch her attitude, and I'm sure it's probably the same thing that he saw. She's focused one in practice, but she's got, she when she wrestles, she's got this face. Do you have a mean face that you show when when you're wrestling?
Probably. I mean, I've seen some of pictures of me where I like scrunch my nose quite a bit and grit down on my mouth guard. So it's probably my wrestling face.
Maybe that's what led him to that conversation about you going to the Olympic Games so early. Yeah, so you get to this grappling club, and typically grappling clubs are jujitsu guys, right? Is that what you went to? You went to more of a jujitsu club, or was it all encompassing?
It was kind of all encompassing. The coach Colin Banfield kind of like his background was wrestling and he really liked wrestling. However, it's a hard sell for a lot of people, say when they're in their teens, to just join a wrestling club. So it was more of a grappling club where the athletes could learn both grappling skills and wrestling skills, being the predominant background of the grappling club. So it was all males at that point, but then I was the first female athlete to join the club. And then since then, he's went on to coach a bunch of other females, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I would just train with any of the guys there. I was also lucky enough that a boy my size, Ligert Sadiku, who's now my fiance and all this, he
Congratulations.
joined the club. So it worked out well because I was, say, around 52 kilos wrestling guys around 65 kilos. So once I had a new partner join that was my size, it made the transition in that club a lot easier.
Nice. I came from the generation where there was no women wrestling. Zero. High school didn't happen. University, it didn't happen. So one of the things when my father was coaching at Western, he was kind of him and the head coach there at the time. They I guess they didn't see eye to eye, so he was kind of pushed to the side. But he started coaching the girls wrestling, and he started doing really, really well. He invested a lot of his time in that, and that's where his passion was, to see where the girls were excelling and get them to the. It's that time at the coach. From what I've been talking to different athletes, it was kind of like pushed aside. It's good to see nowadays. It's not being pushed aside. It's right there where it needs to be. It's in the spotlight. We're seeing more and more athletes like yourself, getting on podcasts, getting on, out there in the media, winning medals. Absolutely amazing. Let's go to now. You go to Brock University. Why did you choose Brock, or did they choose you?
A little bit of both, I would say. So I was lucky enough in 2013 to be on the cadet national team after winning a medal at the national teams or at the national championships. So with that, I got the opportunity to train and travel around the world on the national team for the cadet level. And I was actually lucky enough to work with Tanya Verbeek. Obviously, Canada's most decorated female wrestler. She's amazing. I've since went on to work with her at many levels, and it's a privilege to know and work with her. Anyone who's met her knows what I mean by when I say that.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, when I seen her coaching and I seen her style and just kind of following her journey, because to me she was like a celebrity in my eyes. And then when I got to work with her, I was like, wow, this is amazing. So she although she was on the national team, she was located in St. Catharines, Ontario. So seeing her, and then I also got the opportunity to watch Coach Marty Calder coach at an international event, and I just seen their style and how much they cared about their athletes. I seen the tough love that they could give, and then a handshake and a hug at the end of the match, which is exactly what I need. I need someone to push me in the corner and then give me a hug at the end. So seeing their dynamic, and then coming to the university to tour it, I just knew that this was the place to be.
Mm-hmm. And what program did you go while you were there?
I took sport management.
Mm-hmm. And that was a big interest to you too, as well?
Yeah, so I mean, once I'm done with my athletic career, whenever that will be, I do want to be involved in sport at some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a sport management degree meshed well with me because I kind of got the business side and understanding event planning and all these different aspects of sport.
Mm-hmm.
And the opportunities that I could have for a professional position when I'm done with wrestling. So I think, yeah, it meshed well with my personality and my interests.
Nice. I looked into sports management. One of my nephews is looking at getting into that himself. So there's an online course that's just kind of an exposure, kind of give you, and I looked at it, and it sounds like some fun stuff. So when you're done your sport, but probably not for a long time, I'm assuming, because you just have that drive. It sounds like it. You're probably going to get into that field and then have some fun doing some really cool stuff with other athletes. So maybe you can help those athletes mold. into what you are becoming.
For sure, yeah. I definitely want to move back to Prince Edward Island when I'm done wrestling. It's still in a position where I can't wrestle and live in Prince Edward Island
Hmm.
if I want to compete at the high level. It is growing in PEI, which is great to see, but at the level I'm at, it's not quite there yet. So hopefully I can use my sport management degree, get a job in Prince Edward Island, either work for a provincial or national sport organization, and help grow the sport in PEI.
Hmm. How important is it to have a training environment that pushes you? You talked about Brock. You talked about. I mean, there's no really. I'm get from my understanding. What you just said is that PEI doesn't have any really established wrestling stuff there that would help you progress to the national level at this point, or not national, world level, right?
Yeah, it's not really developed in that sense. We do have a small population.
Hmm.
It is definitely a growing sport. Every time I go back and get the opportunity to work with high school age athletes or even younger, there's more numbers each and every time I go home, which is great because there's a lot of individuals on PEI who are working to grow it. However, once you get to that university age, it's like kind of a that's the dead point. There's nowhere you can wrestle on Prince Edward Island for a university, and the closest one is University of New Brunswick, which is a little ways away for the athletes. So I guess when I go home,
Hmm.
yeah,
So
my friend's in there. Sorry.
yeah, no worries. Going to Brock for the first time, your first wrestling practice. Even when I was wrestling back in, well, we won't even say when. I knew that room to be tough. That's when Richard DeChatelet was the coach there, and Marty was wrestling for Richard at the time. But it was a tough room. It still is. They dominate in the in Canada when it comes to national championships. Both women and men's. Um, what was it like for you to step into their wrestling, your first practice?
It was a lot. I mean, I went from being the top athlete in my room in Prince Edward Island to coming to Brock University and thinking I was super fit, super strong, super technical, super fast, like all the components of a wrestler. And once I got there, I realized, well, there's 20 people who are exactly like me, if not 10 times better than me. So kind of put me down the ranks and realized that I'm going to have to crawl up these ranks if I want to be eventually one of the better athletes in the room, which is exactly what you want. You want to be in the middle of the pack. You want people who are maybe not as great as you, but then also people who are way better than you, and you have to strive to push to meet every single day. And that's exactly where I was. And when I got to Brock University my first year, each weekend that we would have a tournament, there might be 5 people on my team in one weight class. And if I decided to switch a weight class, it would be different people. So it didn't matter where I went. I always had tough girls from my team, let alone the rest of Canada.
You couldn't hide.
No.
So you're in that room. You realize that it's tough, and you're in the middle of the pack. Your mindset there could have been, you know what, this is too much. I can't take this. What kept you going?
I mean, still, I think my Olympic dream.
Hmm.
I think I've always wanted to go to the Olympics, regardless of what sport it was. That's kind of how I mentioned at first. But just knowing that that is a room that could help me achieve the goals that I want to, whatever those goals are at the time, whether it was an OUA championship, a provincial title, a national title, a youth sport title, and now obviously getting to the Olympics and then being successful on the world and Olympic stage. Brock was the room at all throughout my entire journey that was going to get me to those wins. So even if you aren't striving to make the Olympic team, there's a spot for you on the Brock wrestling team where it can help you achieve goals, whether it's as small as winning a university level tournament or even a university level match.
Yeah, it's a tough room. I when I coached at York University, when I left, I sent one of our wrestlers your way. I don't know if he was on the team when you were there, but Clayton Pye. Did you know him?
Yeah, no, it's funny that you say that because Clayton was actually one of my good friends. We ended up living together,
No.
a bunch of other wrestlers as well. So it's kind of interesting, a small world, I guess, for wrestling.
Yeah, yeah. He wrestled for the Harry Geris Wrestling Club in London, Ontario, when Clint Kingsbury coached it. So I got to watch him from there. And then when it was time to recruit him, I went and visited with him. Did well, not really a home visit, but just kind of sat down with him and his dad, and talked about his future with us. And then he ended up coming to York. really Seneca at the time, and then he was going to come to York the second year. But I left, and I thought that there would be better wrestling at for him actually at Brock. We did try to get him to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State actually wanted him, but they weren't offering anything at the time. So you guys made him into a champion. They made yourself into a champion, just at the U level. When did you start making traction into the international level? Like, when did you start to realize, like, hey, I'm getting closer to my dream?
So the first time I was able to compete internationally was in 2013 after winning my first national championships.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of in a position where I thought that I was good enough, and then I got to the world championships and realized, no, I was not good enough at all. My mom joked around when I got single eliminated one time, said, that cost me this much money per second, which is hilarious because at the cadet level, it was self-funded, so we spent a lot of money to get me to an international scene, and where we thought that, oh, Hannah Taylor from PEI is so good, and she's never lost in PEI, she's never lost in the Maritimes, and I thought that then he was going to make me successful on the world level, and it wasn't, which is great because then it made me push harder and make better decisions in training. So once I realized that I wasn't good enough in 2013, I continued to push harder, and every time I went on the international stage, regardless of the outcome, I knew, okay, now it's a building step from there. And I guess by 2017, even though the results weren't showing, I knew that I could still be competitive at the level. I went to the World Championships, won one match, and then lost my match, so that eliminated me from the competition. And then 2 years later, I ended up making the podium. So just kind of looking at every opportunity that I had to compete as a building step to getting on a podium is kind of when I realized, hey, I can be successful on the world level.
Yeah, I love your mindset. You know, you got these kind of roadblocks, you got some failures, and you don't give up. You keep going, you keep going, you keep going. It's like the athlete mindset. I think, you know, today's world, the teachers are preaching as the growth mindset, as was originally, I think it's Carol Dweck's work that came through on the growth mindset. But another mindset that's never really talked about is parental support. How were your parents when you started this sport? Because it's not a typical sport for a female, especially you know, from, you know, the older generations. They look at that. Whoa, why do you want to get into that? Was there support at home for your journey?
My support was incredible. I am super blessed to have the most supportive parents from day one. My mother, Bonnie Taylor, and my father, Norman Taylor, were super supportive my entire career. My mom actually took it a step further. She was not only supportive towards me, but all my teammates, in a sense that she would drive me to school and drop me off, pick up all the kids in our neighborhood to go to the practices, which were an hour away, drive us down to practice, watch our 2 hour practice, drive home and drop everyone off and do the exact same thing 4 days a week, if not 5 days a week. So my mom committed 2 years of her life to doing that. She had no social life. She just had to watch me wrestle on the provincial team and help all of the kids in my neighborhood and on the team make it to that team and make it to those practices. So my mom was paramount in my wrestling career, and then my father as well, in a sense that he helped me financially to be able to get to tournaments. He would help my mother pay for some of the events I would have to go to, whether it was to Ontario or New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and any of the surrounding provinces to get competition. So without my mom and without my dad, not only I wouldn't have been successful, the other teammates that I have, such as Liggett Sadiku, my fiance, he might have not had the opportunities as well.
Hmm. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. You know, parental support at home, especially for sports, can you know, make or break you. I've seen, you know, parents when they're well, sometimes when they're cheering on their kids. Actually, I just saw one last weekend. I was at a football thing, and the dad was coaching, and he was yelling at his son, who was a quarterback, and you know, it was some. Yeah, and I knew it was the son. And I didn't know, but I knew because of the way he was talking to him. You know, just the way that it was kind of like, wow, you wouldn't say that to my kid because I'd come out there and probably knock your teeth out. But he was saying it to his own kid, and I couldn't believe it. But to have support from your family like that, so important. I'm glad to hear you talking about that. I was never assuming that that was what your parents were like, but there are some parents out there that are like that need to be really, if you really want to help your kids' journey in sports, supporting them and doing exactly what your mom has done. I think she taught you a lesson as well in commitment. She committed to you, and you committed to the sport. So good on her for teaching you that lesson.
For sure, for sure. And I hope one day when I have kids that I can do exactly that because without my mom, I wouldn't have been where I am today. So hopefully when I have kids, I can commit to them as well.
That's awesome. So you said you got a fiance, right? You said you do. Obviously, you're hoping to have a family. What is wrestling? How long is wrestling gonna be in your life?
Wrestling, I think, will always be in my life for the
Okay.
first part.
Hmm.
Regardless of what capacity, I'll definitely be coaching. I think because my fiance is a wrestler as well, he's actually a very high level wrestler
Hmm.
himself. So having him, I think, for the rest of our lives as a workout, we're
Hmm.
probably just going to wrestle each other because it's a lot easier to do that and a lot more enjoyable than it is to go on a run or go lift weights and
Well, you don't
all
like
that
running?
aspects. Sorry.
You don't like running?
Oh no, no.
Oh yeah,
I do run a lot, but it's not my favorite form of exercise. If someone said, "Would you rather run for an hour or wrestle for an hour?" I'm picking wrestling for an hour.
exactly.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, I think running is torture. That's what I think. Well, I was a heavyweight, so I mean, I think running was really torturous to me. But yeah, I don't think any wrestler likes running that. They would much
Yeah.
rather get their exercise through the wrestling.
It serves a purpose in my schedule, and I do run a decent amount for weight purposes, and then also just to clear my head mentally. But I don't think it's going to be a long term thing. I think this is as I'm an athlete.
Hmm. You hit on strength training. Let's talk about that. I just did an interview with a guy by the name of Vern Gambetta. Vern used to coach, he was a strength trainer for the San Francisco 49ers, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chicago Bulls, and he's Summer McIntosh as not swim coach, but strength coach now. I don't know if you know who Summer McIntosh is. I think
So,
pretty much every Canadian does.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, how important is your strength training? And has it changed? I guess from when you started to when you got to the national level, is it different in any capacity?
I think that there's different purposes for strength training, and there's different focuses that we can use. So obviously, if you're losing matches because you're not as physically strong, there's an area of opportunity that you can utilize in your strength training. If you're constantly getting injured, perhaps utilizing strength training in order to eliminate that occurrence is also a benefit. Depending on where I'm at in the season, depends on my like what my workouts will look like. I'm lucky enough to have a strength and conditioning coach that tailors entire workouts based on the week and based on the day and based on the training load for that month and the competition load for that month. And they add specific things for specific athletes based on, say, injuries and rehab. So there's a lot of components to strength and conditioning, so much that I can't even talk about it, like, because I don't even know the area of expertise. I just know that it served a purpose for many different aspects of weight training.
Hmm. So, what's your favorite exercise for strength training then?
Probably bench press.
Hmm.
It's pretty common for wrestlers to just like to push. If you think about where you can use that in wrestling,
Hmm.
being able to push your opponent or being able to like bridge off the mat if someone's on you is very beneficial. So seeing that bench press is pretty fun.
Okay. Nice. That's what I got into right after wrestling. I know I'm right into the weightlifting, so that's where the weightlifting question came from. With the strength training, diet comes into play too. So your diet, I'm sure there's people that are listening that are fans of yours, or they just want to be just like you because you're climbing the ladders. There are little wrestlers out there looking up to you, and they're gonna say, "Hey, what does she eat? What is she doing to keep herself strong? What do you do?" And let's talk about a daily routine for you.
Okay. Yeah. I personally think intuitive eating is the best way to do it. Some days I do want pizza, and is that okay? Yes, it is okay. Because once you set so many restrictions and boundaries and rules on food, it does kind of put a negative spin on yourself mentally in terms of what you should be consuming. However, what I do know is that when I eat foods that are healthy and are properly nutritious, I feel good in training. And because I train so much, I would rather feel good in training than not feel good in training. So I feel like my diet kind of reflects that now, especially now that I'm older. Um, so the thing is I work with a nutritionist so they can help me make more informed decisions about when and what I should be eating at the time. I am pretty basic in a sense that I can eat the same thing every single day for 3 months and I would not get sick of it or not get bored of it. So when I wake up, I usually have eggs, omelet, toast, because that's usually for an after workout meal because I usually wake up and do a workout and then have my big breakfast. I like snacks like yogurt, granola, and berries because there's a lot of components in there that are good for you. It's also nice because it's a little bit sweet, and I do like a sweet treat here and there. Supper, I am very basic in terms of what I like. I like a meat, potato or starch, and then vegetable, kind of like a classic home cooked meal. And then I do like yogurt bars, which is like my other sweet treat that I'll eat at night because everyone likes sweet treats.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess just basically making good decisions, eating things that I like that can also make me feel good in training. When I want to have pizza or cake or cookies, I can sneak those in depending on where I'm at in my season as long as I understand that how it's going to make me feel.
Hmm. One of the things that when I was talking to the swim coach, former swim coach Jim Richardson of the University of Michigan, when he was talking about diets and the same thing, he said, fishy crackers, stuff like that. He was, don't take your athlete away from things they enjoy. So it's kind of funny to hear that you're talking about pizza too. All right, because pizza, everybody enjoys pizza. I'm assuming most people do. You're kind of crazy if you haven't, I guess. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm gonna have to edit that one out now. Now, so we've covered food, training, the mental aspect. You've got it already. Do you talk to anybody? Do you have a psychologist on staff with Canada Wrestling or with Brock that you attend to keep you on track of things?
I do, yeah. So I'm lucky enough to work with sports psychologist Judy Goss. She is a member of the Wrestling Canada support staff. So I'm lucky that I can have her on chat Zoom meetings whenever I need and whenever I see fit. She's also great with reaching out to me to book some when I kind of forget and kind of just get stuck in the hustle and bustle of my daily training and forget to book stuff like that. So yeah, she's been a great support.
Mm-hmm. I did a podcast with Ohenawa Akufu. You remember that name? So one of the things she said that, when she would lose, she gave herself the opportunity to feel bad about it for 5 minutes, and get upset, to get depressed or whatever it was. And then she would rock out of it. And if she couldn't, she told her friends, like, if you see me in this funk, you got to get me out. It's time to kick me in the butt. Do you have anybody in the room that'll kind of kick you in the butt and say, hey, or is that the psychologist?
No, I think my fiance, Liga Taniko, so because he went through the process of wrestling at the highest level, he is also supportive in that area. It's pretty funny if you look at our text messages after a tournament when I do that. He's like, it's okay. He's being the supportive fiance that he is. It's okay. You did great. Don't worry. You're going to get them next time. And then when I start digging at myself saying, yeah, but I should have did this, or I wish I did this, then he jumps on as a coaching aspect and starts saying, yeah, you should have did this. You should have did that. So he's with me in the sense that he'll allow me to have my feelings and feel upset about it and then support me as he should, saying it's okay. And then he can also be there in the technical aspect. You're like, look, you know what? That was ugly. You did do this wrong. This was bad. Why didn't you do this? So it is a great balance in that sense that I have him along with the sports psychologist and supportive teammates and coaches.
Nice. We'll go back to Jim Richardson again. I was talking to him about the exact same thing. And he says one of the biggest critics of an athlete is themselves. They are the ones that will look at their competition and they will evaluate it. So you don't have to evaluate it for them. Let them evaluate it and then chime in afterwards. Sounds like that's exactly what your fiance is doing. He would actually take video and he said, you know what? Let them watch their video. Get out of the room, and you have no business talking to them until they've done that evaluation process. And then he goes, you know what you can do is you can actually give them a video of somebody else wrestling and doing some of the similar movements, and then they can say, oh, well, I'm doing the backstroke like this, and then I compare it to this, and they become their own critic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important because I think, and what I'm trying to understand through this podcast is just kind of dissecting the mindset of an athlete, of coaches. But as you're talking about, criticizing yourself, but you're looking for areas of improvement as well. Right? You're not just criticizing, but you're saying, okay, here, here, here. As much as you don't like to evaluate yourself, right? But they're good, great opportunities. How important are losses to you?
I think losses serve a huge purpose in my wrestling career. I mean, I've been successful and I've also lost a lot of matches. I think out of anyone I know, I've been single eliminated more times than anyone else. But I've also now probably had the most matches this year because I went on to wrestle a lot of tournaments where if you lose the match, you were out. So with that, I've now got the experience of wrestling that type of competition, which changes your mindset, saying like instead of I'm going to get eliminated, that, oh, I'm going to go out there and give it my all. And if I get eliminated, so be it. So with that, I feel like I've been able to analyze my wrestling a lot because I get to look at the opportunities of, hey, the days I was successful versus the days I was not. I also, again, I'm lucky with a support staff where my coaches will do match analysis with me. So that also is like a learning process for myself because I get to see what they're looking for, see their areas of opportunity that they see in me, and then add that to what I analyze.
Mm-hmm. Yesterday, so I'm just listening to you, but yesterday I sat in practice and sometimes I'll give like a maybe a minute speech to our young athletes. And these kids they're young. I mean, the oldest would be maybe high school. Youngest is going to be 8 years old. So we got a little bit of an age gap here and there, but they're young kids. But one of the things I harp on is effort and attitude. Effort, 100% is working hard in the room. That's what I want to see. I don't really care for talented athletes because talented athletes sometimes their ego will get in the way. I will tell you, and I told a story yesterday about how my ego got in the way when one year when I was at one of our championships. So I told that story, but I said, I'm looking for effort, and attitude. If you have a good attitude towards a sport, and I'm seeing that in you, just talking to you. I haven't met you before. We just corresponded through this, what was it, Instagram. I watched a few of your matches, but listening to you talk right now, you've got a great attitude towards the sport. It's that growth mindset. You are hardworking as well. Anybody that goes to Brock's got to be a hard worker. I mean, go in that room, you're going to be eliminated if you don't work hard.
That's true.
Yeah. So that mindset, you're going to carry that on to whatever's next. You're saying Mexico is the spot for you. How soon is that coming up?
I leave for Mexico for the Pan Am Championships on February the 18th.
Mm-hmm.
I will then compete on the 22nd of February, and this is the last ranking event for the Pan Am qualifier, which is 1 week later.
Mm-hmm.
So by attending the Pan Am Championships, it will give me points in order to have a better seeding for the Olympic qualifier. Mm-hmm. So I will have 2 back-to-back competitions coming up, February 22nd, and then I believe February 28th.
Wow. You're still chasing it. That's great. And
yeah.
That doesn't scare you at all, does it?
No, I mean, this is a great position to be in. I have the opportunity to try to go to the Olympics, mm-hmm. So there's no complaints there.
Awesome. So you're going to those 2 tournaments. You're training at Brock.
Yep.
Right? Do you have any downtime? And what do you do with it if you do have it?
My downtime. I like to spend time with my dog. I have a French bulldog named Nelson, named after the half Nelson wrestling move.
Okay.
So, yeah, he's a 5-year-old French bulldog. I like to spend time with him. He's pretty fun. Mm-hmm. I also like to spend time with my teammates when we're off. We like to go on hikes, hang out. I also love to go shopping and thrifting. Don't spend a lot of money, but browsing is fun for me. And whenever I get a chance to go home to Prince Edward Island and visit family is something that I love to do as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. We're getting towards the end. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but there are some things I want to end this with. Somebody in your life that has made a huge impact on your wrestling career. Who is that? Or you don't have to give names, or you just maybe describe them and what they've done for you. Mm-hmm. Or you can name them if you want.
That's a hard question because I don't know if throughout this entire podcast I've had name dropped so many people because mm-hmm. I have such a big support network. So maybe, I guess I would say, I think just coming from Prince Edward Island, so everyone in PEI, like, there's 145,000 people or whatever, and all of them support me, which is incredible. So rather than, again, name dropping one person, I'm just going to say the entire support network that I have at
Yeah.
home in Prince Edward Island. I have people messaging me on Instagram and Facebook when I lose at a tournament. I have people congratulating me when I win. I have people congratulating me that I get to go to a tournament, let alone however I do. So it's so nice to have a support network like that from day one.
Hmm. I'll tell you, I visited PEI. Those are some of the nicest people in Canada. That's awesome
Yeah.
that you have that support network. That's a great answer. I know I tried to kind of box you in there with something. My apologies. I probably shouldn't have because, yeah, that's not fair. But you know what? No, great. Now, Hannah, you talked about your social media presence. You talked about some people messaging here and there. Do you want to give the podcast listeners a way of cheering you on through social media somewhere?
Sure, yeah. So I like to update on Facebook because I have a lot of family on Facebook. So you can look my page up, Hannah Taylor. And then I also like to update on Instagram, which is where I kind of post more content about myself. My Instagram is Hannah Faye Tay, so HANNAHFAYTAY. The reason behind that is my middle name is Faye after my grandmother, and then my last name being Taylor, Tay, just kind of short formed it.
Ah, okay. Well, I'll tell you a thing. Hannah Taylor really caught my eye with the Taylor last name. I don't know if you know, but there was a gentleman by the name of Chris Taylor uh,
Okay.
back in 1972. He wrestled for Iowa. He was about 450 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a legend in Iowa, but my dad actually wrestled him. So Taylor, when I see wrestling and the last name Taylor, it actually means something. To me, it was, but not you. Like when I came to that, I just when I saw the name Taylor, I'm like, oh, cool. I'm assuming you have no relationship with the guy. You're not related because you didn't even know who he was. But you'll have to look him up. He was a monster. I think my dad was the only one to take him down in NC2A history. But there's a little tidbit for you. Now you know a little
Yeah.
bit more about a guy that wrestled for with your last name. Hmm. I
Mhm.
want to thank you for coming on the show. You're reachable on Instagram, Facebook. We want to wish you luck in the upcoming meets, of course. Um, it's been great talking to you. Is there anything you want to add before we go?
Um, for anyone watching who doesn't wrestle, join wrestling if you can. Give it a try. Get your kids involved. I think it's a great sport. It teaches you a lot. I've been lucky enough to travel the world through the sport of wrestling, and I've also been lucky enough to meet so many amazing people. So if this is a chance for people to join wrestling, it kind of catches your interest, even give it a try, do it.
Cool. You've been watching the Conceive, Believe, and Achieve podcast here with Canadian wrestler Hannah Taylor. Keep an eye on her, folks. She's doing great things in the sport, and she will continue to do great things in the sport. She's striving for excellence. Keep it up there, kid. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.